Solo sat in his room staring blankly at the pages of his book, but the words felt distant. Something inside him was off, a heaviness he couldn't shake. His cousin Favor had always been someone he looked up to, someone he felt comfortable with, until one day, everything changed. It had started innocently enough. Favor, at 26 years old, often made jokes about how Solo was growing up too fast. She would tease him, calling him a bookworm and saying he needed to learn about the real world. He never thought much of it until the day she showed him something on her phone, something that shook him to his core. She leaned in close, her voice soft but insistent. "You need to know what people don't tell you about life. You're not a little boy anymore." At first, Solo felt uncomfortable, but when she insisted, he gave in. What happened next was something he couldn't unsee. Explicit images, ideas, and games that were far beyond his years. He was stunned, not knowing how to react or how to stop her. He didn't want this, didn't ask for it, but Favor's charm made it seem like it was all just normal. "Everyone sees this stuff," she'd said. "You need to be prepared for the world." Solo didn't know how to process what had happened. He felt a sick knot in his stomach. Was this normal? Was he overreacting? But it didn't feel right. It felt like a violation, even if no one else saw it that way. Still, he couldn't bring himself to tell anyone, especially not his parents. What if they didn't believe him? What if they thought he was making it up? A few days passed and the unease in Solo only grew. At dinner one night, he couldn't focus on anything except the weight in his chest. His parents noticed the shift in him, the way he seemed quieter, more withdrawn. His mother, Mrs. Oluwasen, asked gently, "Solo, is everything all right? You've been so distant." Solo's heart raced. He wanted to say something, anything, but when he opened his mouth, nothing came out. His father, Mr. Oluwasen, looked at him with concern, though his voice held a note of impatience. "If there's something bothering you, son, you know you can talk to us." The words were there, right on the tip of his tongue, but he couldn't find the courage to speak them. Instead, he mumbled something about being tired, not wanting to trouble anyone. His parents nodded, unaware of the storm brewing inside their son. The days that followed only worsened. Solo's confusion and fear turned into anger at himself for being unable to stop Favor, for feeling powerless and small. Yet, every time he thought about confronting her, doubt crept in. What if he was wrong? What if she was right? Maybe this was just a part of growing up. But deep down, Solo knew it wasn't. What Favor had done to him wasn't normal. It wasn't right. Finally, after a few more weeks of silence, Solo reached out to Tunde, his best friend. He didn't know what else to do. Tunde had been his rock for years, the one person who knew everything about him, and now he was his last hope. Tunde met Solo after school one day, noticing the exhaustion on his face. "You've been off lately. What's going on, man?" Tunde's voice was calm but concerned. Solo struggled to speak. The words were trapped in his throat, and the thought of sharing his secret with anyone, even Tunde, made him want to disappear. But Tunde persisted, his eyes soft, giving Solo the space to speak when he was ready. Finally, with tears in his eyes, Solo blurted it out. "Favor! She showed me things. Things I didn't want to see. Things that..." His voice broke. "I'm scared, Tunde. I don't know what to do." Tunde's expression hardened, his hand reaching out to comfort his friend. "You're not alone, Solo. I believe you. But we need to make sure you get help. This isn't your fault. You don't have to keep carrying this alone." The relief Solo felt in that moment was overwhelming. He had been so sure that no one would believe him, so certain that his silence would be his prison forever. But Tunde's words shattered that belief. For the first time, Solo felt like he could take a step towards something better, something that wasn't filled with shame and fear. Together, they researched ways to get help, finding a local counsellor who specialised in cases like Solo's. Tunde convinced Solo to talk to his parents again, but this time with the support of a professional to guide the conversation. It wasn't easy. Solo's hands shook as he stood in front of his parents, telling them what favour had done to him. But this time, Tunde was there, and so was a counsellor on the other end of the phone, ready to back him up. Solo spoke the truth, his voice breaking with every word, but he pushed through. Favour showed me things that I shouldn't have seen, he said. She made me do things that felt wrong. Please believe me. His mother's face went pale, and his father's eyes grew wide with disbelief. At first there was silence. Then his mother spoke in a broken voice. His mother's face went pale, and his father's eyes grew wide with disbelief. At first there was silence. Then his mother spoke in a broken voice. Solo, we didn't know. We should have listened to you earlier. We're so sorry. We will fix this. We'll make sure she never hurts you again. His father too seemed lost for words, but then his stern demeanour cracked. I should have protected you. We'll report this. You're safe now, Solo. The air in the room shifted. Solo's parents weren't just hearing him, they were believing him. They were finally seeing the truth. In the weeks that followed, Solo began the difficult journey of healing. He started therapy, speaking to someone who understood the complexities of the trauma he had endured. He wasn't healed yet, he knew that. But he felt a small sense of peace knowing that he wasn't fighting this alone anymore. Tunde stood by him every step of the way. You're not alone in this, man. You've got me, and we'll get through this together. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Solo allowed himself to believe that things could get better. That, with time, he could rebuild his sense of self and his trust in the world around him. The road to healing was long and filled with challenges, but Solo knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone, and that made all the difference.